Good morning. It's Saturday morning, the 28th of March. Still hard for me to figure all this out. Sorry I wasn't back to you sooner this week. It's been a very hectic week for me. It's now been 2 weeks since we went on this orders from the governor to self-isolate. And I think a lot of the language that we use and we hear sends us more fear than actual comfort. So two phrases I want to focus on this morning have to do with social distancing versus physical distancing, and the other one is quarantine versus self-shelter at place and self-care. And so the first one is really about shelter in place. When we talk about quarantine, it's like we're pariahs, we're cast out, we're somehow separated. And the problem with that is then we feel deprived, and that's why we saw so many people earlier. We go out to the lakefront and do all those things as if it didn't matter because it's their right, it's their life, they can do what they want. And of course, the mayor shut down the beaches. And that makes a lot of sense because we're trying to protect one another for the common good. But still, it's very difficult to stay inside when you're by yourself or when you have a house full of children. You have benefits from having family at home, and there are also sacrifices. It makes it a little more difficult to work from home, makes it a little more difficult perhaps even to work, and it certainly makes it more difficult to find any quiet time of your own. I have the opposite problem. I work alone, I live alone, and so I'm isolated except when I go to visit my mother and in the hospice, which is also life-giving but draining at the same time. And so how do we do self-care and stay socially connected even when we are physically distant? How do we stay not quarantined, but shelter in place for the common good and try to make the best of it? And so I think that this whole idea of physical distance is important. The virus spreads. I'm obviously not a doctor, so I just listen to what the CDC has to say and the health officials, but it spreads through air droplets. It spreads through proximity to another person, and we have to take all kinds of measures to make sure that we don't sneeze in public, we're not around people who do that, that we make sure we sanitize things. A lot of that stuff is the normal precautions in the flu season to begin with, but more of it is how do we stay safe and consider the common good. And every time we feel like we're making a sacrifice, say, are we offering this up for the common good? Am I doing this because this is what God asks us to do for the community? And as a very privileged culture, we don't like that. And so this is an opportunity, particularly in the Lenten season, for us to get more deeply into the spiritual sense of sacrifice and know how we can do it. And there are all kinds of things we can do at home. We can read, we can pray, we can stream videos, we can video chat and all those other things. And that's what I want to talk about, physical distance versus social distance. We stay physically distanced, but socially we need to be connected. So we can video chat with family and friends. We can check on neighbors and relatives. The corporal works of mercy, there are many people who cannot get out, and they may need somebody to buy groceries for them and to check on them. And we can certainly do that from a safe physical distance, but help be connected as well. Same is true with the telephone or emails, video chatting, video conferencing. All those things we know how to do. We're blessed to have the technology to do it. Actually, I don't know how to do it all that well, but I'm trying my best. And it's difficult because we get caught up. And so this social isolation can lead to a sense of deprivement, a sense of not being connected, of not being really a part of a community. And so while we can't publicly pray together in physical distance, we certainly cannot celebrate Mass publicly yet or come to have these gatherings, but we can do it by prayer, by video conferencing, by joining chat lines where they talk about prayer together. A friend of mine is on a book club now. They meet once a week and they discuss something for an hour once a week. And it's a way to stay connected. The other thing is to go more deeply in prayer. One of the things that, because I do live alone, I have more time for, and because I get up early most days, I have more time for prayer. And so I spent 45 minutes, for example, in the rosary this morning, holding up all the different people that I know affected, the groups, not individuals, but the people affected by the virus, whether it's the victims, their families, the deceased, the healthcare workers, their families, their children, the businesses that are affected, all these different groups, the employees of those businesses, those who are still delivering goods and taking care of us with streets and sanitation and all those things that are exposing themselves to risk at the same time for the common good, to hold up them in prayer and then see how we can do it. I'm not on line with certain things, but I have written a couple of checks to the Food Depository and Catholic Charities to try to help out because I can't physically be there. So we want to safeguard our health for the bigger picture. We want to also minimize the risk to ourselves and to family members, but we also want to reach out in prayer and in spiritual contact, emotional contact, visual contact, voice contact, even when we can't see each other or touch each other or physically be together. And I think this will help all of us if we look at this attitude of prayer and this attitude of how we are all still connected spiritually and as a communion of faith, certainly as a communion of our citizens, our neighbors, and so forth, to help us to see that while this is a difficult time and may last for several more weeks, that we just take it day by day and continue to ask God for the grace to see how we can stay sane, stay safe, and help us to reach out to others to make sure that they feel connected as well. I'll be doing a video tomorrow for the homily for the Palm Sunday Mass. No, sorry about that. That's for the fifth Sunday of Easter. Fifth Sunday of Lent. I'm way ahead of myself because I'm working on liturgies ahead of time for the fifth Sunday of Lent, which is the raising of Lazarus. And so I would ask you all to read the gospel, read the scriptures for tomorrow's reading for the fifth Sunday of Lent, and then please tune in when I get the homily done for you. God bless you all and stay safe.